I want you guys to understand how sometimes the recency bias, confirmation bias can not just affect how we pick investments, but it bleeds over into everything, what we're willing to do, what we're unwilling to do. You gonna say it?
We're back, baby.
Oh my God.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is another episode of Money Therapy.
Money Therapy.
I'm your co-host, Bill Magill, along with...
Brandan Chasteen.
He's on time this time. Good job.
So, real quick, we talk about, like, we just introduced it so passively, money therapy.
Yeah.
Just want, like, if you're listening to this episode and it happens to be your first one, money therapy, the primary driver, like, why did we name it money therapy, was so much because I wanted a show that was not about, like, the sexy new money hack or, like, the tips and tricks or, you know, the clickbait stuff. It's more about, like, people go through real stuff in life, and either what they're going through involves, like, oftentimes involves money, or money is making them go through some things.
Yeah.
So I always kind of say lightly, but honestly, that money therapy is about, it's about sitting at the intersection of human beings and money.
Yeah.
And really trying, the hopeful outcome of this is everybody learns how to have a better relationship with money.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're going to throw out a few, like, tips, tricks, hacks when we can. But that's just not the primary. There's so many shows like that. So we just wanted to create a space where people could come in and be like, I'm feeling this way, don't really know how to understand it. And then hopefully after you listen to some episodes, we've got, like, I think 70 plus episodes now. We got a lot of episodes up.
Yeah.
So there are topics out there for almost everything.
Yeah.
And we just try and help people navigate life and be smarter and better for it. And if you need more help, you can reach out to us because we'll always work one-on-one with people as well.
And I think it's great because one of the things that we find as being, professional money managers and planners is that a lot of times when we're sitting down with a client, it's amazing how quickly emotions come out and how often people use phrases like, well, I feel this way, or I feel that this is the way it is, or I feel like I would like to do these things, fill in the blank. And that's why I think money therapy is such a great title. And I really think it's just such a natural part of our personal finances. Such a personal thing. And, I hope we also try and give the listener an idea of what it's like to work with a financial planner and not only a financial planner but with us and how we try and kind of differentiate ourselves, but really speak to that emotional side, that therapy side of things.
I think it's important. Like, I kind of selfishly, one of my reasons for doing this is to make sure that my clients do understand all the things that I can do, because it's impossible to sit down and create a list of everything that I can help people through. That's hard. And so if I can just put these episodes out on a weekly basis and they're listening, they're like, oh, Brandan, you do this too. Or, oh, I've been actually struggling with that. I just didn't know that's what it was. Can you help? So, money therapy.
Money therapy. And if y'all are new, a lot of our topics come from what we call the Sunday series email that Brandan puts on. And so you can get the show notes before the show. If you go to our website at harpethwealthpartners.com, you'll find both of our emails there. And we can get you on that list and get you in the community.
So it's real simple. It's completely free. You shoot me an email, say, hey, I'd like to be on that list. I'll put you on my email list. It's super simple. The reason why you would want to get an email ahead of time is because a couple things. One, I do send out a few extra emails I'd say maybe 2 extra emails a month that cover more specific financial topics, so you can become better educated on the finance side.
Yeah.
But the intention is behind the Sunday series email is you get a 2-minute read on Sunday explaining the concept of what we're going to be talking about on the show. on Tuesday, and you have a couple days to think for yourself, and it makes it more applicable. You'll retain everything a lot better if you get a couple doses of it versus just one quick setting when you're only halfway paying attention on your drive or during your sauna session or whatever, wherever you're listening to us. But with that being said, we do appreciate even the half listeners.
Yeah, we'll take 50-50.
Because I do that. I listen to, when I'm listening to podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I love podcasts. I love books on recordings. That's all I listen to, really. But when I'm doing that, a lot of times I'll get like something will get said, and I just get stuck on that thought, and I'll process it really deeply.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, it's been like 20 minutes, and they're like, "Hey, thanks for coming to the episode." I'm like, "Oh, now I gotta go back." But anyway, we appreciate everyone that's listening and taking time, and we hope that we're making impact. If you have show ideas or questions, you can also email this to us, and we will do our best to create a show. But today, we're gonna talk about a human behavior. So this is heavy on the psychology side today. Recency bias.
Yes.
We're going to talk a little bit about confirmation bias because they're very closely related. But you're like, what is recency bias? Maybe you've heard of it before. Recency bias is just about getting tunnel vision, honestly.
Yeah.
It's taking the experiences that we might have just been through and making decisions about our future based on the most recent occurrences of these events. So we initially, and I was like, this makes most sense to start here, is just talking about like investments, right? So people will come in, if we've been in a market where, like, let's say we've been in a bull market all year.
Yeah.
People come in and they're like, oh, I got to get in on this, right? Like, I'm all in. I'm risky. I want to take the risk. I want these returns. I want to participate.
Yeah.
But they're only evaluating their potential based off the past few months.
Yeah.
When we know that markets go up and down, if we zoom out and look at years or decades.
Yeah.
Right? And if we look at decades and we realize, hey, on average, the market only returns, 6%, and this year we're up 10, chances are, well, I shouldn't say chances are, there is a chance, at least an equal chance, that you're going to underperform or potentially have to take a little bit of a loss before the next leg higher.
Yeah.
So recency bias can be blinders. They're tunnel vision. We're looking too narrowly at, and we see this a lot with investment returns.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that always comes to mind when we're talking about this sort of thing, this manifests itself to us when we're working with clients in a couple of different ways, but the one that I hear the most is people say, oh, it's different this time. Like, oh, this is definitely worse than 2008, or this is definitely worse than 2001, or this is so much different than it was before. And there is a little truth to that. I mean, there is, what we like to say is the factors, because life changes, are always going to be different. But there are still financial principles at the heart of this. This is why we talk so much about developing a strategy and controlling what you can control. I can't control the war in Ukraine and Russia. I can't control anything really that happens at the White House other than voting, right? But I can control how much I save, how much I budget, how much debt I pay off, those sorts of things. So whenever you're feeling that pressure of, man, this always, right when you feel like you got it figured out because you've been through something maybe traumatic in terms of your personal finance or something like that, it's always still important to reevaluate and pick your head up and see what's coming down the pipe. And again, ask yourself what you can control.
Yeah. I got really hung up that you said that you implied your vote matters. I was just like, man, like this, it's adorable. He still thinks that.
Well, they put me in a special group that,
oh man, we're not going to get political. That's totally a joke. Your vote does matter. Ugh, Brandan, why'd you do that? All right.
Why was I voting out by the dumpster last time?
that's where my vote goes. So obviously, there's some research that suggests that people tend to latch on to losses. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
right? You mentioned the book, The Undoing Project, who was Nobel Prize
Daniel
winner, Kahneman.
Yep. The Undoing Project.
Really,
Great book.
really famous economist. And
Nobel Prize winner.
yeah, people tend to latch onto negative experiences. So oftentimes, recency bias really flares up coming out of like bad times. It's way more obvious, at least, because people get overly pessimistic.
Yeah.
But I will say that if you're in the financial planning space, especially if you're younger and you're kind of just getting started in this industry, I think it's really important. Like, do not think that because people are agreeing with you that it's not because of recency bias. Like,
Right.
I remember, like, I came into this industry when we were in the middle of a pretty long-term good market, or at least maybe even towards the beginning of it. And there were so many of my mentors like, hey, think about this. I'm like, no, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
They were on the same page, but it was because of recency bias that they were so agreeable.
Yeah.
Right. So I would caution that sometimes this recency bias, when you're in a place where you're trying to go against the grain and everybody's countering you, like it's like, yeah, everybody else has recency bias. I think I'm in a good space here.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't, like when we're trying to go against the grain and everybody's agreeing with us, sometimes that can feel really good. And that's where we get confirmation bias. And these like another human behavior that is so closely related, because I mentioned, like recency bias, we talk about tunnel vision over the past, like maybe we're looking at like the last quarter of data instead of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. We're looking at this management team who's been in place for the past year, but we're not looking at the succession of managers that have been in part of this company for the past 40 years.
Right.
So the point is like sometimes that's recency bias, but what may not feel as recent is like the 2008 thing, right? So 2008 financial crisis, it was bad. It was scary. Now, if I'm trying to talk to somebody and I'm like, hey, we need to get some money invested, and they're like, no, 2008, I lost everything. I don't do like the stock market.
Yeah.
Like, is that recency bias at this point because it's been like 15 years? I would say it's pretty selective. And if you only take that moment, maybe 15 years out of you, if you're, 80 years old, maybe that could be recent. But also, I think you have some pain from that experience.
Yeah.
And so, but if it's not recency bias, it's definitely confirmation bias. You're looking at one particular event to confirm the way you feel.
Yeah. I think that's a really important distinction too, because sometimes when people talk about, 2008 specifically, they make it sound like it happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so I think that pertains to the confirmation bias. Like, at what point do you cross over, from recency to, confirmation bias?
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't think it's that important.
Yeah.
I think it's just, instead of being like, oh, it's not recency bias because it was 15 years ago. Well, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe it still is recency bias.
But are you still worried about it?
but either way, if it's not that, it's confirmation bias, right?
Sure.
So, question.
Okay.
How do we mitigate the negative effects of recency bias and or confirmation bias? We're very similar to our brain and our psyche.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I think, notice I said mitigate, and I did not say like never experience it. Sure. We are going to do this. We are going to have recency bias. We're like, first of all, admitting you have a problem is how does that saying go? Admitting you have a problem is
the first step.
Is the first step. There you go. Thank you. Man, that's I've been messing up a lot of sayings lately.
It's all good. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, thanks. So admitting that we are susceptible to this is important. The next thing we need to do is admitting that it's there. We need to learn how to recognize what it is. And so we just talked really about what it is and how it can present itself.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the investments, but I do want to mention the fact that this can also affect like goal planning.
Yeah.
Right? And I keep telling you, guys, almost every episode, we're really focused on goals and things to right size ourselves for 2024 and get prepared to like decisively win the year.
Yeah.
I want my clients to be prepared to accomplish stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to sit there in January, try to be thinking of goals. I want to have the goals, I want to have them in place, and I want my first actionable steps to be taken like the first week of January.
Sure.
Right. So with that, recognize recency bias or confirmation bias inside of your own goal planning. If you're coming out of a rough year,
Yeah.
it could make you feel like any win is a good thing, but not setting the appropriate goals could derail the long-term strategic operation.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to so sometimes if we lose, if we have like a losing year, we're kind of defeated. We're like, man, like I was hoping to, get 10%, whatever.
Yeah.
And I only got 8. So maybe my goal this year should be 9. No, well, if I needed 10 and I only got 8, maybe this year should be 13 or 14. Right.
Yeah.
So being appropriate, don't let feeling defeated create like an avoidance or an unwillingness to bear the appropriate amount of risk.
Right.
On the flip side, if you're coming out of an awesome year, don't let greed encourage you to take unnecessary risks. If you're coming out of an awesome year, maybe it's a year where you kind of take a knee. Maybe it's a year where we reflect on or we try some different things as far as like preservation, protection, right?
Yeah.
Like I want my clients to create new goals, but I also want them to protect what they've created, provide for their families, and then be, charitable and grateful and all these other things too. So
Yeah.
maybe this is a year where we focus on some other things. I want you guys to understand how sometimes the recency bias, confirmation bias can not just affect how we pick investments,
Yeah.
but it bleeds over into everything, what we're willing to do, what we're unwilling to do. If you need help developing your goals, guys, reach out. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And
And the one thing that came to mind for me, and in order to support what you just said about talking investments and your goals, and sometimes it's a lot more basic than that. We talked a lot about last week about reducing some anxiety and focusing our attention on certain things. And what came to my mind is sometimes just taking the step of debt reduction and or establishing an emergency fund. And having that security of, hey, I've got, I don't have any payments, maybe that's where you are personally. I don't have any payments and I have 6 months of cash in case anything happens. That puts you in an entirely different situation to then make those decisions that Brandon's talking about in terms of, do I want to be more aggressive this year? Do I need to take a knee and pull it back? Well, you're in a completely different headspace if you're doing what Brandon's telling you to do as far as taking care of your family, taking care of your needs, setting the solid foundation. That can relieve a lot of anxiety towards personal finance and really reduce recency bias.
Yeah.
Because if you have that stable foundation, you can afford to take risks or take risk off the table if you need to. You're just giving yourself more options. More options will diminish recency bias and confirmation bias because you have a winning formula that's actually working.
So go back a few weeks ago and listen to the episode on, days or decades. It's about perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Realize if you had a tough year, not every year's tough. If you had, a down market year, not every year's a down market year. So again, so recognizing all these things, a couple other quick ways on how to mitigate the effects or the occurrences of falling prey to recency bias is one, like I said, days or decades, you decide, take a broad perspective.
Yeah.
Super important. One thing that I've always heard is, like this is a little bit more about the investment side of things, but
Yeah.
you can apply this anywhere. I apply this all the time to a lot of things, but one of my mentors, we were talking about how, like when I was learning how to evaluate investments, a lot of times he's like, I never look at like the year to date or the 1 year returns. He's like, I immediately look at the 5 and 10 year returns. He's like, if somebody's ever trying to tell me something about the 1 year returns, he's like, my catchphrase here is shoot it again. And what he was referring to was like those like trick shots you see on YouTube.
Yeah.
Where like back in the day on early YouTube, you'd see this like dude make a crazy shot.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's no way that was his first try, right? Nowadays you watch it and you actually see him like attempt 3,482 and he finally gets it.
Yeah.
But you realize, hey, like if you had a great return this year, shoot it again. Like show me if that's the case, if this is what you're pitching me on, then your 10-year track record should be 10 times that. And if it's not, then we could look ahead to probably some underperformance. So shoot it again. And then another way, this is probably a little bit more about confirmation bias, but I think it applies to both confirmation bias and recency bias. Mm-hmm. Put people on your team that can be the devil's advocate.
Yes.
Get people with opposing views. If you think something's rock solid, if you think you've developed a really smart goal, tell somebody to troubleshoot it. Tell them to try to pick it apart. Tell them to play devil's advocate. Give them permission to really be a critic and
hold you accountable.
And hold you accountable, but make you defend what you're saying.
Yeah.
And see if you can learn something about seeing it the other way. I was just talking to a client like last week, and I was like, like the saying goes, you can't read the label from inside the jar.
Yeah.
I was like, you're inside the jar. I'm not. I'm telling you what the label says. You need to hear it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. At least you need you to hear it, chew on it, sleep on it, think about it, and let's have another conversation. We don't have to do it my way, but I'm outside the jar.
Yeah.
So that's all I got. Recency bias, it's heavy on the psychology side, but it affects investment planning. It affects our investment decisions, but it also affects the goals. And that's what we're working on. Guys, we're like 2 weeks away from Christmas. You're probably ramping up for vacation time, family time, taking an e time. I got some work for you guys to do over the next couple of weeks, so you can come back. They're real easy things, but I think you can fill some of that space of just calmness by spending some time like asking yourself some really good questions. I want to give you those questions over the next couple of weeks, but hopefully most of us over the next couple of weeks have some time to think and reflect. And as you start building your goals for 2024, as you start reflecting on things and trying to make decisions about what's next in your life, ask yourself, are any of your decisions limited because of recent hard times, or are they too risky because of recent euphoric good times? Anything?
Kind of said it better myself.
Cool.
We'll see y'all next week.
Take care. We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandan at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.